Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a stack of sources, focusing on a figure absolutely crucial to the early Maratha Empire, though perhaps, well, less celebrated than he should be, Daulat Khan. We've got articles here, some historical notes, research, covering the mid to late 1600s.
Right.
Our mission today is to really unpack these sources and get a feel for the significant sort of foundational role Daulat Khan played right alongside Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj,
Yeah.
especially in building and protecting that vital Maratha naval power.
That's exactly right. Shivaji Maharaj's incredible land campaigns get a lot of the focus, and, rightly so.
Sure.
But his vision for a strong navy was equally revolutionary and, well, absolutely critical for the Maratha state's survival and growth.
Okay.
And our sources consistently highlight Daulat Khan not just as a part of that early maritime force, but really as a foundational pillar.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. We'll look at the context, why this navy was even needed in the first place. Then we'll dive into who Daulat Khan actually was, how he came to join Shivaji, his specific vital roles,
Yeah.
some of the key actions he was involved in, and ultimately why his contribution was just so essential to Maratha history.
Exactly.
This deep dive is specifically for you, the listener, to get a clear, comprehensive picture of this important commander and his impact.
Sounds good.
So let's set the scene first. Why did Shivaji Maharaj, his base was initially inland, right? Why did he need a navy at all during the mid to late 1600s?
Well, the sources make it very clear. The Konkan coast, this long stretch of coastline where Maratha power was expanding, it wasn't just vulnerable from land, it faced constant, serious threats from the sea.
Sure.
We're talking about formidable rivals like the Siddis of Janjira. They were a strong local naval power, and also those established foreign powers, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, they were all operating in these waters.
So a lot going on there.
A lot. And if you couldn't control the sea lanes, you just couldn't truly secure your territory. You couldn't protect your burgeoning trade routes or support the forts along the coast.
Makes sense.
Shivaji Maharaj recognized this incredibly early on. He understood that a strong maritime force wasn't some kind of luxury. It was essential for defense and, well, state building.
Right.
This led him to take the pioneering step of establishing what one source actually describes as India's first navy under his leadership.
Wow. So it wasn't just about land battles then. It was about projecting power and defense onto the water itself.
Precisely.
And for that, he needed not just ships, but skilled sea warriors, commanders who really knew the coastal waters.
Exactly, skilled people.
And this is where Daulat Khan enters the picture.
This is where he comes in.
Okay, based on the sources, tell us about Daulat Khan himself.
Okay.
What's his basic background and profile?
So the notes and articles identify him pretty straightforwardly as a naval officer, a key sea commander within that nascent Maratha Navy. He served directly under Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, operating extensively in the coastal Konkan region and the southwestern sea during that crucial mid to late 1600s period. And he worked alongside other early naval leaders that the sources mentioned too, like Daria Sarang and Mai Nayak Bhandari.
Right, those names come up too. What kind of community or background did he likely come from, did the sources say?
Yeah, he's described as likely originating from a coastal warrior or maybe a traditional seafaring community.
Okay.
And this is significant because it means he would have already possessed, inherent skills in seamanship, navigation, coastal warfare expertise that was absolutely vital.
So stuff you can't just learn overnight.
Exactly. Not easily acquired inland, that's for sure.
And do the sources give us a sense of when and how he actually joined Shivaji Maharaj?
Yes, they point to his joining happening around the 1660s.
Okay, so pretty early on.
Very early. This time frame is key. It's right during the critical foundation phase of the Maratha Navy when Shivaji was actively building this force, basically from scratch.
Right.
The location was the coastal region of Konkan, likely near areas like the major ports or naval bases being developed, places like Malvan, Jaigat, or Kalyan.
Got it.
And Shivaji Maharaj, he wasn't just gathering men, he was actively identifying and recruiting brave, capable sea warriors, people who had proven skills. And importantly, people he could trust. Loyalty was key.
Absolutely.
Daulat Khan was clearly one of these early loyal commanders who answered that call. The sources suggest Shivaji recognized his specific abilities, skills in patrolling, expert ship handling, combat experience on the water.
So very specific skill sets.
Yes, and he quickly entrusted him with significant command responsibilities. His existing expertise, his loyalty, his bravery, it made him an invaluable asset right from day one.
So he wasn't someone who learned on the job with Shivaji. He was brought in because he already had the skills they desperately needed right at the very beginning.
That's the picture the sources paint, yes. He brought the expertise with him.
Okay. The sources really detail the specific roles Daulat Khan played. Beyond just being a commander, what were his main responsibilities day to day?
Well, he led patrol ships and smaller fleets, yes, but his role, it went much deeper than that. He was essentially the Maratha Navy's first line of constant vigilance along that coast.
Okay, the eyes and ears.
Exactly. The sources emphasize his strategic thinking and his bravery, not just in, pitched battles, but during the routine sea patrols and those critical quick response missions.
Right. What areas was he responsible for keeping secure? Was it the whole coast?
He was given specific charge of patrolling the southern Konkan coast.
Ah, the southern part.
Yeah, think of it as his beat, his area of responsibility. His mission there was relentless. Keep it secure from those persistent threats we talked about. The Siddis coming up from Janjira, the Portuguese trying to assert control, and potential incursions or disruptions from Dutch and British ships just navigating the area.
So a very active zone.
Extremely active. And he also had a crucial, almost logistical role with the sea forts, didn't he? The sources mention that.
Absolutely. This was a major part of his contribution, actually.
Yeah.
He acted as a critical link for the key sea forts along that coastline, places like Vijaydurg, Jaigad, Kolaba.
Okay.
His role was coordinating with these forts from the sea, which was incredibly difficult, dangerous work.
I can imagine.
It wasn't just about defense. It was about making sure these isolated outposts were regularly supplied with essential provisions, food, water, arms, even reinforcements.
Wow.
Keeping these forts guarded and ensuring they could communicate effectively, especially when threatened by enemy fleets, that was a constant high-stakes operation he was overseeing.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare, frankly, especially on potentially dangerous waters.
It really does.
What kind of ships would he be using for this, and what were his preferred strategies? Small ships.
Yeah, the sources mention he commanded small naval fleets, primarily using those light and fast ships, the Galavats and Guravs that were common in the region then.
These weren't massive warships, not like the European ones, but their strength was in their agility.
Okay.
They were perfect for the shallower coastal waters of the Konkan and could often outmaneuver larger, slower vessels.
So using the environment to their advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his strategies leveraged this. They focused on effectiveness, things like surprise attacks, using speed and knowledge of the coastline to hit and fade before larger enemy ships could properly respond.
Guerrilla tactics at sea, almost.
In a way, yes. He was also critical in protecting Maratha cargo ships moving along the coast and actively disrupting enemy trade vessels, which was a way to hurt rivals economically,
Right. Hitting them where it hurts. That raises an important question we see touched upon in the sources. How crucial exactly were these specific types of light, fast ships and these surprise tactics for the early Maratha Navy's success, especially against often larger European or city vessels?
That's a really great point, and the sources imply it was absolutely fundamental. The Maratha Navy, initially at least, didn't have the resources to build huge ships of the line like the Europeans could.
Right.
Their strength had to come from something else. So by mastering the use of these fast coastal vessels and employing those hit-and-run tactics, they could contest control of the waters, they could protect their own traffic, and they could make the coast incredibly dangerous for invaders, even invaders with superior firepower in open water.
Okay.
It allowed them to, punch above their weight, especially in their home territory.
So he wasn't just fighting. He was part of figuring out the right tools and the right way to use them for this unique coastal environment.
Precisely.
Yeah.
He was adapting.
It sounds like he really covered everything from continuous patrolling and defensive coordination to that critical logistical support and even offensive disruption on the sea.
A very multifaceted role, definitely.
The sources also mention specific types of actions he was involved in, even if they weren't always grand, named battles like on land. What kind of engagements did he participate in?
Yeah, they list several key types of actions that seem to have kept him constantly busy.
Like what?
Well, there were frequent skirmishes with the cities. These weren't always large fleet battles necessarily,
Right.
but often involved defending key coastal towns or smaller ports from cities' raids, using his maneuverable ships to repel attackers close to the shore.
Okay, defensive actions.
Yes. And then he was continuously engaged in naval patrol missions. These were critical for routine security, obviously, but specifically focused on protecting Maratha trade ships
Mm-hmm.
and ensuring royal sea routes were safe from piracy or any kind of hostile interception. This was essential for the state's economy.
Vital.
Then there were the fort supply operations we mentioned. These weren't just logistics. They involved navigating dangerous waters, maybe breaking through loose blockades, or dodging enemy patrols just to get supplies through to those isolated forts.
High risk.
Very high risk, high reward activity. And finally, there were encounters with the Portuguese. The sources mention him helping resist Portuguese attempts to control coastal movement or enforce blockades on Maratha ports. These were often tense standoffs or sharp, localized fights just to keep those sea lanes open.
So it sounds like less like single decisive clashes and more like constant vital actions, a continuous effort to maintain control and deny access to rivals along that coastline.
That's a very good way to put it. A constant pressure, a constant presence.
So considering all these contributions then, the constant coastal protection, leading the early fleet, that challenging fort coordination, ensuring maritime trade security, what was his overall importance in Maratha history, according to these sources? How significant was he?
Well, he was, quite simply, a first-line defender of the Konkan coastline. That's huge.
Yeah.
At a time when the Maratha state was rapidly expanding inland, he ensured their vulnerable flank on the sea was protected from some pretty formidable enemies.
Right.
The sources consistently highlight him as one of the absolutely founding officers who directly helped Shivaji Maharaj translate his vision into the practical reality of creating that navy.
So foundational is the word.
Foundational, yes. And he was noted for his unwavering loyalty and commitment to Shivaji's mission.
Okay.
What's also fascinating here, and the sources mention this, is that he wasn't just a commander. He also acted as a naval mentor.
Oh, interesting. What does that mean?
It means he was actively training other smaller commanders in these vital skills, patrolling techniques, coastal navigation, effective sailing, and the specific strategies that worked for the Maratha fleet.
Oh, passing on the knowledge.
Exactly. This was crucial for building the Navy's capacity beyond just that initial set of officers Shivaji recruited, building depth.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It explains how the Navy could grow and sustain itself.
Yeah.
But if he was so crucial, why is his name, as we noted, less famous today compared to, say, Kanhoji Angre? He became the legendary Maratha admiral maybe a generation or two later, right?
That's a really interesting question the sources touch on, and it's a point of historical curiosity, I suppose.
Yeah.
They acknowledge his name is less frequently mentioned in popular history today, but they are very clear that in Shivaji's own time, he was known. He was known as a committed, capable commander, constantly handling these high-risk, essential sea tasks.
So his reputation was solid then.
It seems so. The sources suggest a few possibilities for why he's less known now, though it's not, definitively stated.
Okay.
One is simply timing. He may have retired or perhaps passed away, or maybe his active command period just ended before Kanhoji Angre rose to prominence.
Right.
Angre then became the central figure in later Maratha naval history, which is, in some respects, maybe better documented or captured the popular imagination more.
I see. So later events overshadowed the beginnings a bit.
Possibly. Early foundational periods can sometimes be overshadowed by later, more consolidated eras. It happens in history. However, his legacy, according to these sources, remains significant. He is clearly remembered as a foundational pillar of Shivaji's early naval system.
Okay.
He was an early naval hero, crucial to the establishment of what's called India's first real indigenous sea force under Shivaji Maharaj.
Right.
His key role was establishing that naval power and security in coastal areas where control of the sea was absolutely essential for the Maratha state's defense and its ability to trade and, well, prosper.
So while his name might not be as instantly recognizable today, he was absolutely essential to getting Shivaji's ambitious maritime project off the ground.
Yes.
And really laying the groundwork for future Maratha naval strength.
Couldn't have happened without figures like him, it seems.
Okay. So we've unpacked these sources on Daulat Khan.
Mm-hmm.
We've looked at his profile, his joining during that critical early phase, his multifaceted roles in patrolling, fort support, commanding the fleet, his constant actions against coastal threats, and his vital importance in establishing Shivaji's navy.
Yeah, he emerges as a loyal, skilled, and truly foundational commander operating at a time of intense challenge on the Konkan coast.
Right.
He ensured the safety of that crucial region and was instrumental in building the very bedrock of Maratha sea power. His story is, I think, a powerful reminder that major historical achievements often rely heavily on the dedicated, sometimes less celebrated, work of foundational figures like him.
The ones who build the systems.
Exactly, the ones who build the systems and defenses from the ground up.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive?
Well, it means understanding that historical power isn't built just through famous, decisive battles, right?
Right.
It's also built through strategic vision, like Shivaji, recognizing the need for a navy, and the very specific, vital, often day-to-day contributions of individuals in specialized, sometimes dangerous foundational roles, like Daulat Khan's work in the early Maratha Navy. And this raises, I think, an important question for you to consider. When we look at historical narratives, are we maybe giving enough weight to the figures who established the crucial systems, the ones who managed the complex logistics, ensured the day-to-day security,
Right.
rather than just focusing on those who led the most famous charges? How many other foundational figures, essential to the fabric of their time, might be waiting to be rediscovered?